Designed by, has anybody ever heard of Ray Kurzweil?
No.
He's a scientist, and it's the other people that designed it are an organization for the blind called the National Federation for the Blind, of the Blind, rather. So what you do is, first of all, to make sure that this is printed print, correct?
Yeah, printed.
Okay. What you do is you make sure that you're aligned correctly. That's the button I use that actually you use for the camera, but to make sure that I'm in alignment, they have what's called a field of view report. So I'm going to touch that, and it tells me where I am in relation to the page.
Field of view report. Field of view report. Top rotated 0 degrees clockwise.
Okay, so let's see what we get. That's a pretty good view.
Take picture. Take picture. Pause. Kids cannot play regular computer game. It's hard for them to ills. 1. Embed chips in the eyes. Pros and cons 2. Brief talk about current audio games in the market.
Whose lines are those?
And if I had bothered to do it better.
Handwrite. Can you do some handwriting if I write
No,
carefully?
can't do handwritten material. There are a lot of tablets that actually do handwritten material, but not too many things for the blind are capable of that yet. But then I'll show you one last thing, and let me get out of this. Now my children were always afraid because I do a lot of things on my own, but your children, you guys are protective sometimes of your parents too, right?
Yeah.
So mine tend to be that way. So what my children they said, but Mom, you can't see. So what if somebody gives you a $1 bill and they see it's a 20? So we have since the advent of the iPhone.
They can tell you.
It can tell me the denomination, and I'll show you that in just a second. One second, let me get my money.
Page 1, 2. Adjustable. Money meter. Double tap to open. Double tap. Money meter money. Go to com. Status bar. Swipe down with 3 fingers to reveal the notification center. Swipe up with 3 fingers to reveal the control center.
Oh, stop talking thing. It's talking too much time.
Money meter money. $10. $10.
Yeah, it's in
So there are apps for everything. You can even get apps for menus in a restaurant. And there's an app called All Menus. So like for instance, if your parents took you to IHOP or wherever you guys like to eat, you could look that app up in the All Menus and you can read the menu. So a lot of times when I'm going out with my friends who are blind, we just look up the menus or we look them up online or something like that. I mean, for us, because we love computers, we spend half our lives on computers. So we really do. Oh, definitely. That's my job.
That's so in the restaurant. Hamburger, cheeseburger.
So could you tell us a little bit about the life of the blind kids?
Sure,
And I guess it must be quite different from the regular kids.
Well, not really. I mean, we play sports. I mean, I was not blind as a kid. I should clarify that. I wasn't born blind. I lost my sight as a teenager. But before then, and even after then, I played sports. And blind kids play all kinds of sports. They play a sport called beep ball. There are other kinds of sports that involve, with the balls and things like that, they actually beep inside so that you can determine where they are. I used to play basketball even after I lost my sight. I kind of gauged where the hoop was and could actually make baskets after I lost my sight.
Wow.
Blind kids do play a lot of games on the computer, but you guys, you're as far as I know, and Patrick's correct, I don't know of any for the Xbox, so that's unique. We do a lot of there's schools for the blind, but they're not so popular anymore. And I never went to a school for the blind. Even when I lost my sight, my mother read to me when I was growing up.
So you still go to the regular school?
But nowadays they have resource rooms for kids with disabilities, so the kids can go to a regular public school, and if whatever they need, if they need Braille, or if they need something else because of another disability, say for instance, a lot of kids with mobility disabilities use Dragon Naturally Speaking, to control the computer with speech. They call it speech computing. This is what I do for a living. I provide computer-assisted technology solutions to people in my agency. We actually have thousands of people with disabilities within my agency.
So do like the 508 check, those kind of things?
Yes, that's my office. We're the 508 office for our agency. Yes.
If a child is born without vision, how do you teach them to those geometric object shapes and those kind of concepts?
With tactile things, they're taught for geometry.
Yeah.
I took geometry as a blind person and did well in it. And they teach you, but by teaching with tactile things, and for blind people there's a code called Nemeth code, which is numbers and numeric symbols like plus signs, minus signs, multiplication, division, and of course blind kids use talking calculators.
Oh,
And we have talking scientific calculators.
that's nice.
Absolutely. And I use the calculator on the iPhone, but I have another talking calculator that I can use for percentages, for all kinds of things like that.
I see.
How does the walking stick work?
Sure. The cane, you're taught a lot of different techniques with the cane. This is a folding one. I brought this little one because my one I use for work is beaten up, so this is more of the one I take when I go out. But the cane, if you want to touch it, it's very lightweight. It's made of graphite. It's not made of metal. And what you do is you're taught techniques. Like for instance, one of the techniques that a blind person is taught is when you go to a new place, you go around you can do either what they call structured exploration, which means you can explore from the outside in or the inside out, and you're taught techniques to deal with stairs, to deal with everything, to deal with all kinds of situations. You're even taught protective, like when you're in a strange situation and you're bending over. Now you might think, okay, maybe I might hit myself in something, but what you do is you do a protective uphand reach and a protective underhand reach. So that if you bend over and something's there, your hand will strike it, not your head. Or if you do like that and something's down here, your hand will strike it, not your body. It keeps you from getting injured. And I believe you. And then we're taught techniques for crossing streets. When you get to a street crossing, there are a number of kind of foot maneuvers they teach you to do, but they also teach you to listen for parallel and perpendicular traffic. If, for instance, you're at a corner, if you're standing at a corner, and you have parallel traffic and perpendicular traffic, you wait for the perpendicular traffic to stop and the parallel traffic to go. And you probably also heard that they have talking or audible signals that tell people, where I am at Glebe and Randolph, it says, "Don't walk, don't walk."
And they also come down how much time you sleep.
Yes, it comes down. Yeah, absolutely. Very good.
I have an idea. With this pole, if they put something like an iPhone thing near the end, then you use your pole to point to something. You will tell you what to do.
I have actually an app that does that. We can get points of interest just by pointing at them, and it tells us what they are. And we can I use Google Maps too for the walking directions. And with this other app that I'm talking about, you can get points of interest. You can get intersections. You know what intersection you're at. Whether you're at the northeast intersection or whatever. So when I go to meet my friends sometimes, or if I go to meet one of my children, I will, I can set Google Maps to help give me directions to that place. And this other app works with it to give me intersections and other kinds of information, like I can set it for points of interest, like I said, that kind of thing. But the iPhone has been, iPhone and computers have been pretty revolutionary in making the life of blind people a lot easier. People type. People always ask me one question, and then I'll let you guys have questions for me. One question people always ask me is, how do you type? Well, when you learn to type, generally you learn to touch type, and I learned to type before I lost my sight. So you don't have to look to type at all.
Is there a screen that can that make a sound so that you know where this sound comes from? For example, if you have a spreadsheet, a bigger computer screen, and it has many cells, you know that, right?
Right, of course.
And then, is it possible that you can hear the sound come from which cell?
Oh yeah. For instance, if I do an alt sum, like if I'm totaling a column, it will tell me you know, do you want to take the what is it, the default, whatever, like A1 to, you know, to J1 or whatever, it will tell me that, and I'll know what column or what row I'm summing up.
Or can you wear a headphone so that you hear the sound that actually come from which direction?
That's what, well, it doesn't, with screen readers, and this is a hard concept for people to understand, with screen readers, they're not really directional. You know, people will say, look at the right side of the screen, but screen readers just, you know, you go down the screen and you hear what's there. You hear the links. Like I hear the various elements. I have commands for buttons. I have commands for links, commands for headings.
I see.
Commands, you know, so that if I want to examine a page, I can look at the links, the headings, the buttons, whatever the element is on the page, and I can look at all of them. The form fields, I can fill out forms.
Yeah, I imagine there's a headphone. You have two earphones there. If the number is on, if the thing is on the right of the screen, then the right earphone makes sound, or something like that. Is there something like this?
No, it doesn't really. It doesn't. When you're actually listening to the screen, I know this probably sounds kind of strange, but you don't really need directions when you need directions in games, of course, but you don't really need directions when you're filling out forms, because if you're using a tab key, or if you're arrowing up and down,
it's sequential.
Yeah, it's sequential, right? One of the things in 508 is tab order. If you tab through a page, the elements are supposed to appear on the page the same. You know, you're supposed to hear them the same way they appear on the page.
I see. You push on tab, then it will say address.
Right.
Then
And
tab
then
next to phone.
Right. That's what it does. Right. First name, last name. This is a required field. Blah blah blah. And then you have to fill in. And I can't tell you how many forms I've had to fill in.
I see. You can make it read back to you, so that just in case there's a mistype.
Oh yeah, you can have it. You can have it if you want to, or you can like in Word, for instance, you can just use the regular commands. Like you can use spell check, and you can use thesauruses and things like that to check your spelling. That's what we do. We do a demonstration every month of the equipment that we provide, and I demonstrate the screen reader, and I show people how you use, you know, I do the same thing. I can do headings. I can produce headings and format a document similar to the way a sighted person would format a document and make outlines and things like that just by using keyboard commands. The combination of the native keyboard commands that are in Windows itself and the keyboard commands that are available to you with the screen reader, so that you can do those kinds of things. You can bold things. You can italicize things. You can center things. You can change the font. You can do most anything. So, yes, you will find that blind kids will be really receptive, I think, to your idea, because there are lots of blind kids, as Patrick probably told you, that do love. They like to play games. They like to do, well, like I said, I know those guys, those triplets who want to be programmers, and I actually have a lot of friends where I work who are blind programmers.
So is there any way that a computer game or audio game can help kids, blind kids, to increase their computer skills, so that make them more employable, or those kind of things?
Well, you would definitely, I definitely think so, because the kids that have the best computer skills are going to, you know, they're going to be able to make their way better in the world. And I know for me, I had to develop my computer skills as an adult, but my kids, just like you guys, I'm sure, you know, my kids have known my kids can take apart a computer almost and put it back together.
Okay, Kevin, you have a question?
Sure.
Is it possible if we could later on maybe in their years, get a blind kid and see if we could teach him or her how to do it? Maybe we could start up a program how to teach blind kids how to program and code stuff.
Sure. I mean, talk to Patrick about that. He would be a perfect resource for that, because he does a lot of those kinds of classes, and he knows the triplets too.
Is it also possible if we could interview one of your blind kids, maybe one of the triplets or something?
Just ask Patrick, because they hang out more with him. I know the boys, but I'm not really friends with him, but he knows them quite well. And I think that, interviewing a blind kid would give them, give you guys more of their perspective and what they're looking